Once again, joining the UP NISMED webinars on K-12 Science. Today's webinar, the 6th for Grade 8 and the 13th in the UP NISMED series, focuses on the 4th quarter topic, living things and their environment. We hope that the webinar will help you understand the storyline that connects the 5 modules and give you practical tips for effectively facilitating the learning activities in your own classrooms. Let's look at an hour and 10 minutes for the presentations, and we also would like to provide about 10 minutes for the question and answer. So we hope that you'll be able to join us up until the end when we do our feedback, sharing, and wrap up. Okay, so again, I'm happy to inform our participants this afternoon that today's resource persons are actually not new to you. They have been my co-hosts in past webinars and have hosted 1 or 2 webinars themselves. They were also our resource persons in one of the grade 7 webinars. I'd like to introduce them as they appear in the presentations this afternoon. Our first Okay, I will be loading now the presentations we will use for the webinar. Okay, so our first speaker, Michael Anthony Mantala, is graduate of BS Biology from UP Los Angeles. Before joining NISMED's biology group in 2009, he taught biology for 10 years at the Philippine Science High School, Cagayan Valley campus, and in 2 private science high schools. Mike also worked in 2 review and tutorial centers here in Metro Manila, and in his capacity as tutor, handled all science subjects. Mike served as trainer in national training of trainers conducted for both grade 7 and 8. Today, Mike will walk us through the storyline that connects the 5 modules of living things and their environment, and will present the overviews for modules 4 and 5. Our other presenter or speaker is Miss Dulce Sebastian, and I will introduce her just before she starts her presentation. Meanwhile, let me turn you over to Mike Mantala for the overview of Unit 4, Living Things and Their Environment. Mike?
Thank you, Ma'am Sel. Good afternoon, KaSaMa teachers. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to NISMED's webinar series on the K-12. In this webinar, we will be covering the modules in Unit 4, the life sciences part of Grade 8 and their implementation. Okay, so this is the unit opener for Unit 4, and this picture captures everything. So sorry for that. Okay, I'm back. Again, good afternoon to everyone. So this is unit opener for Unit 4, as I have mentioned earlier. And this picture here captures things or concepts that we're going to cover in the next hour and a half. Now, I would like to start by showing you how concepts in Unit 4 have been spiraled. Okay, so as you see here, there are 4 strands in Unit 4. Parts and functions, biodiversity, heredity, and of which we have 2 components, inheritance and variation, and ecosystems. Now for each strand, concepts are spiraled from macro to micro, such as in parts and functions, in which concepts develop from levels of organization in an organism to focus on specific organ systems, and from concrete to abstract, such as in ecosystems. So you have here ecological relationships, to transformation of energy and cycling of materials, which will be the topic for grade 8, down to photosynthesis and cellular respiration in grade 9. So that's moving from concrete to abstract. You'll have a better appreciation of this spiraling progression if you've read the storyline in the first few pages of the curriculum guide. I hope you have with you the science framework or the curriculum guide. At any rate, here's an abridged storyline for parts and functions in animals and plants. Okay, so in grade 7, learners are introduced to the levels of organization in an organism. Okay, and then they learn that organisms consist of cells, most of which are grouped into organ systems, well, actually tissues first, then organs, then organ systems that perform specialized functions. Okay, and then moving to grade 8, learners gain knowledge of how the body breaks down food into forms that can be absorbed through the digestive system. Okay, so that's actually the focus of Module 3, okay, the digestive system. And also in grade 8, learners' gases are exchanged through the respiratory system. Okay, and they also learn that dissolved wastes are removed through the urinary system while solid wastes are eliminated. So these are actually just the dark lights, you know, on the stage where the brightest light is actually focused on just one organ system, the digestive system. Okay. Now these dark lights here on the stage, which are represented by the respiratory system, the circulatory system, they get their turn in grade 9. Okay, when they get the brightest light. Okay, for in grade 9, learners study the coordinated functions of the digestive respiratory systems. There's not just here a focus of only one system. What we have here is a focus on the interaction among 3 interrelated organ systems: the digestive system, the respiratory system, and the circulatory system. So that's for parts and function, one storyline. We move on to another strand. Okay, so here's the storyline for heredity, inheritance, and variation. In grade 7, the focus is on modes of reproduction, of which there are 2, okay, sexual and asexual. Then when our learners get to grade 8, they start studying the process of cell division, okay, cell division cycles that include mitosis and meiosis. Then learners would also get to understand in this grade level that meiosis is an early step in sexual reproduction that leads to variation. Then in grade 9, learners focus on the structure, the molecular structure of genes and chromosomes, and how these structures perform or facilitate the transmission of traits from gen to generation. And in this strand, the storyline starts from learners looking into the cells, okay? So they would learn here that there are similar cells, that there are different cells, okay? Cells that there are cells in similar tissues and organs in other animals, okay? And those in humans being human beings, but differ somewhat from cells found in plants, okay? So in grade 7, we have here a differentiation of plant and animal cells. Then in grade 8, learners learn that species refers to a group of organisms that can mate with one another to produce fertile offspring. And then they also get to learn biodiversity as the collective variety of species living in an ecosystem. Okay, so this serves as an introduction to the topic on hierarchical taxonomic system. Okay, so that's for biodiversity in grade 8. Then in grade 9, learners learn that most species that have once existed are now extinct. Species become extinct when they fail to adapt to changes in the environment. But other than this, actually in grade 9, students will also get to learn the different ways through which we can conserve our reefs. Okay, so incorporated also in grade 9 would be the conservation efforts adopted by governments the world over, and what's actually being done at the grassroots level in order to protect these species and their habitats. Then, moving to another strand of Unit 4, ecosystems, the storyline starts from learners learning about interactions taking place at different levels of organization in ecosystems. So there's interaction happening among cells, interaction happening among organs, organ systems. So these are actually interactions that are taking place within an organism. Then there's interaction takes beyond the level of the organism. I'm referring to populations and communities. Then when learners get to grade 8, they learn how energy is transformed and how materials are cycled in ecosystems. This transformation of energy in grade 8 is actually looked into through the feeding relationships or through transfer of energy across trophic levels. Then in grade 9, learners learn how plants capture energy from the sun and store energy in sugar molecules. This process is called photosynthesis. Okay, so this stored energy is used by cells during respiration. And in grade 9, our students also get to learn the relation between photosynthesis and cellular respiration that at some levels complement actually each other. Okay, so by the way, let me just go back to the storyline for ecosystems. Okay, so mindful of how concepts in the life sciences are spiraled, following a storyline that takes into account the cognitive capabilities of student level, 5 modules were developed for this unit. So these are the modules. Module 1 is on biodiversity. This is going to be tackled later by Ma'am Dulce, as well as Module 2, interactions. Then I'll get back later, okay, for Module 3, the digestive system, and Module 4, nutrition and wellness, and Module 5, cellular reproduction and genetics. Each of these modules starts with essential questions that are germinated from the big ideas. The activities in each module were developed in such a way that these questions are answered and that these big ideas are made part of the students' enduring understanding. Okay, here are the activities for Module 1. Okay, so there are 5 activities in all. The name, and here are the objectives. Gives of organisms as they are known in the community. Recognize the need to have a system of classifying and naming organisms. Actually, you have this in your learners modules. I also hope that you have with you right now your learning materials or learners modules. Then activity 2, how do bacteria in yogurt look like? Okay, so in here, you're going to do microscopic examination of the microorganisms that are present in products like yogurt. Activity 3, what can you do to prevent dengue? Okay. Activity 4, what is the importance of biodiversity to ecosystems? And activity 5, this is actually the culminating activity. The students will have to make a personal and group vision for the future in relation to biodiversity, analyze the different ways by which government and focus and groups and individuals are doing in order to arrive at the envisioned future. And of course, they'd also be asked to take personal action towards conserving biodiversity. Okay, let me just go back to that slide on biodiversity. Okay, we may not be able to know how many species are on Earth after all these activities in Module 1. In fact, up to now, no one knows exactly how many there are, but what we want to inculcate in our students at the end of Module 1 on biodiversity is that we share this planet not just among ourselves, but also with the other organisms of this planet. So Ma'am Dulce will share with us more on this in a while. Okay, so here are the activities for Module 2. Activity 1, how to identify the components of a food chain in an ecosystem. Making food webs, that's activity 2, and meat eaters versus plant eaters. Again, you have this in your learners modules. So a logical consequence of knowing how diverse our country is, that's taken up in module 1, is of course knowing as well how all these species interact with each other to keep the balance in our ecosystems. Okay, so here are the activities for module 3. We have here 4 activities. Activity 1 is composed of 2 parts. Okay, a Gutsy game is actually a motivational game, a motivational activity that revisits concepts that have been tackled or taken up in grade 7. And the second part of activity 1 is titled, this is an activity that showcases mechanical digestion, how it works. Then activity 2 moves from mechanical digestion to chemical digestion. Activity 2 is how do enzymes affect digestion. Activity 3 is a follow-up activity. Okay, so the preparations that have been carried out in activity 2 would be the same preparations for activity 3 with the exception of the inclusion of pH. Okay, so we'll have more on this later. So the activities in this digestive system provide some of the details for explaining how energy is transferred through the trophic levels, okay, as covered in module 2. And in module 4, nutrition and wellness, so these are the activities. There are in fact only 3 activities. Am I eating right? Activity 2, what happens when nutritional needs are not adequately met? Activity 3, using essential concepts in nutrition to planning a menu. These activities in this module, or the activities module, provides some of the details for summing up the reasons why we need to eat the right kind and amount of food. Food is a basic need that's very much emphasized in the lower grades. We need it for sustenance, growth, and repair, and action, all of which are necessary concepts that will be covered in the activities for Module 5. And finally, this is Module 5, and here are the activities. There are in fact 7 activities in Module 5. I intentionally just covered 5 activities because in the revised curriculum guide, what I mean to say is in the latest version of the curriculum guide, Mendelian inheritance has already been transferred to grade 9. Okay, so what was left in grade 8 is cell reproduction or cell division cycle and Mendelian genetics. Okay, so through these activities, we'll be able to know how cell division cycles are able to effect growth and repair and provide a backdrop for the organism level of reproduction. Okay, so for our overview of Unit 4 of Grade 8, I'll be back later to discuss modules 3, 4, and 5 and walk you through the different activities
thank you,
in these
Mike,
modules.
for
Mamsel?
that overview. I think these are very helpful perspectives into better understanding
Hello, Mamsel.
curriculum. Yes, again, thank you, Mike, for that overview. I hope our teachers will be able to be helped by this presentation, especially in making sense of the different connections among the modules and even among the activities within a module. So again, this is a helpful material for understanding the spiraling curriculum for grade 8 science, especially concerning the life science strand on living things and their environment. We will have Mike again later as he presents modules 3, 4, and 5. Meanwhile, let me introduce our next presenter. Our next is Dulce Sebastian. Dulce is also from NISMED's Biology Education Group. She is a graduate of BS Biology from the University of San Agustin in Iloilo and holds a master's degree in Biology Education from UP Diliman. Before joining NISMED in 1985, she has taught biology at the high school and college levels. As science education specialist, Dulce has been involved in curriculum development, teacher professional development, and research here at NISMED. Like Mike, Dulce was involved as trainer in the grades 7 and 8 training of trainers for K-12 science. In today's webinar, Dulce will guide us through Module 1, Biodiversity, and also Module 2, Interactions. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dulce.
Hello, good afternoon. Yes, I hope you are hearing us. I will be discussing the module on biodiversity, which is the first module. I know teachers in the field are already taking up with the students this module. I would like to start first with the connections of this module, of this topic, with the grade 7 unit for Earth and Space, which students have taken up the year before, last year, when grade 7 was implemented. Grade 7 unit 4, Earth and Space, dealt with is there a connection between the location of the country, the Philippines, and its natural resources? As we all know, biodiversity would refer to the variety of species present or found in ecosystems. Okay, so this would refer to species variety or species diversity, which we also refer to as our resources. Resources that we use is, for medicine, for food, etc. No? So the quick questions for this module are, first, why is biodiversity important? Second, what human activities destroy or endanger the existence of rare and economically important species? And of course, what human activities help protect and conserve rare and economically important species? The big ideas for this module are: species is a group of organisms that can mate with one another to produce fertile offspring. That biodiversity is the collective of species living in an ecosystem. That high biodiversity provides greater economic stability or ecosystem stability. And biodiversity is important to ecosystems because of the interdependence of organisms to one another. The suggested time allotment for this, the minimum, no, is 8 hours. Now we go to the next slide. Okay, what are the learning activities? Sir Mike has shown you this slide before. Okay, so just as a review, there are 5 activities in the module with their objectives. Okay, let's go to the first activity. Okay, this can be done in an hour, including the discussion, if it is well facilitated. So what do we want to highlight in the post-activity discussion after the students have done this activity? they will discover that they can use various sources to check names of organisms. So we will, as a teacher, we should be able to let them recognize that there is not just one resource or source of information about organisms or the names of organisms. Organisms also may be given different names because they will discover that as they do the activity, different places would attribute different names to these organisms. So there will be a lot of perhaps discussion, but we teachers should accept all of these first, because with this activity, they will see the need that there should be a system of classifying organisms to avoid confusion. Okay, go to the next slide. Okay. In doing the activity, it is important that we as teachers prepare materials needed ahead of time. So photos of different activities or different organisms are given in the teacher's guide. So we tell our students to start with the name used for an organism in their own locality, and then some students, when they present their outputs, may discover that that the same organism may be given a different name in another place. Okay, as I have said, we should accept all other names given by different students to a particular organism. Now we can save time in doing the activity by requesting only particular groups to present their outputs. And this is what we would like to encourage our teachers in the field. Always refer to the teacher's guide for the different activities or the discussions that are indicated in the learner's material, because this is our sure, guide, so that the activities will be better implemented. Okay, now after this part in the learner's module, after this first activity, it is, we can find there rather, the different groups already of organisms. Now to save on time, because the module is a bit long, and then it is not necessary that you will take up with the students page by page, no, the different discussions there. What you can do is that you can assign students to read through, like for example, 4 or 5 pages that would refer to a certain group of organisms, okay, and then have them tabulate the information that they will get out of that discussion. So the first column, you will have there perhaps the group, and then the second column will have characteristics or features of this group of organisms, their habitat, okay, in another column, the importance or uses to other organisms, or the important interactions that they have with the other organisms. And since in all of these groups, we have indicated the activities that endanger the organism's existence, then we can also add this one, because this is a very important part of their learning and their discussion, rather, towards the end of the module. No? So you don't need to go through all the pages to discuss them, because you will not have enough time. So let us again encourage students to read ahead of time in this module. Okay. Now let us go to activity 2 for biodiversity. The objectives of this activity are to identify bacteria present in fermented food or drink, to describe bacteria observed under the microscope, and to explain the use of bacteria in food or drink making. With regards to the materials, yogurt is available in grocery stores, and in its absence, Yakult can be used as described in the teacher's guide. Methylene blue is available in pet shops, and then you don't need to buy droppers because you can wash droppers from infant medicines. And in this topic, students will realize that not all bacteria are harmful, and then here they will know, they will be dealing about bacteria that is useful. Okay, teaching tips. Of course, again, there you are, procure materials 2 to 3 days before the activity. And then this is an exercise again of how they are going to use the microscope. But in case there's a lack of microscopes, teachers can then demonstrate the activity. And for those who will be teaching this for the first time, let us always collaborate with and ask assistance from biology teachers in your school. Okay, the third activity is what can you do to prevent dengue? This is very relevant because even during the dry season, we still have cases of dengue. So here you have the objectives as indicated before. And then what do we want to highlight during the post-activity processing? First, a person can be sick of dengue 4 times in his or her lifetime. Okay, because there are 4 strains of the virus. Okay, we develop only immunity to the virus that has attacked us. The next virus that will attack us, we will not be immune to it. So, tandaan ng ating mga bata yan. Early detection is important. And then, we should remember that there is still no cure or vaccines for dengue. And when they take up this life cycle of the mosquito that carry the dengue virus, they should be able to know the different ways how to prevent dengue. Okay. Let's go to activity 4. What is the importance of biodiversity to ecosystems? Okay, there you are, the objectives as indicated before. And then, what do we want to highlight during the post-activity processing? In this activity, okay, with the discussion before the activity rather, they will now be able to differentiate low and high biodiversity in an ecosystem. And with the recent typhoons, floodings, okay, they will realize through the questions in the activity the effects of strong typhoons or disasters to areas with low biodiversity. And then they will then conclude that there are advantages of high biodiversity over low biodiversity. And of course, they will realize the importance of biodiversity to ecosystems. Okay. Next, in activity 4, okay, you can make copies or cut out from magazine photos as indicated in the teacher's guide. But it is very important that if the ecosystems are present in your area, you don't need to use pictures. So let students describe them, and you will notice that they may be knowing these ecosystems more than us teachers. Okay, and then have students recall from time to time previous lessons on different groups of organisms. If you remember the table that I was telling you, okay, for each of the groups. Next, module 5 is I Create the Future. This activity would now be more on protecting, okay, and conserving biodiversity. Because knowing about the advantage of high biodiversity over low biodiversity, they will realize that they would really should take personal action towards conserving biodiversity. There are 3 parts to this activity. Okay. What you should highlight during the post-activity processing is the concept of HIPPO. Okay, this HIPPO is an acronym for the main causes or the causes of why we lose biodiversity. No, first one is the loss of habitat. Second one is the invasion of introduced species. The third one is population increase. The fourth one is pollution. And the second one is, the fifth one rather, is the over-collection or over-harvesting of our resources. Okay? And that the students should realize that the biodiversity in the community consists of the resources that its members need to survive and continue to exist, okay, should be protected and conserved. Okay? And then, through the activity, they should be aware of what the community, what the government, NGOs, and other agencies are doing to protect and conserve biodiversity. And that even young as they are, they can contribute in the protection and conservation of biodiversity. And I would like to quote what a certain person, a fisherman, who has experienced, realized the importance of biodiversity and respecting also other organisms in our surroundings. Because when he caught a fish while he was out in the sea, another creature took the fish away from him, and he said, it was a humble reminder of the creatures that I shared the ocean with. So, hindi lang tayo nangangailangan ng resources, kundi maiba ding mga creatures na nangangailangan nito. Okay. Teaching tips. Of course, you should make copies of the priority pyramid and the Making It Happen handout. Okay. Of course, we should refer to the TG for a good implementation of the activity. And then, since our students have become adept in the use of the internet, they can search information and resources on biodiversity conservation projects. Okay. Now, for the assessment, I am giving you some tips. You will know if your students have really learned about the topic. Okay, by making them do the following. No, they can list ways to stop or minimize the threats of biodiversity, make a poster announcing and inviting citizens in the community to join a tree planting activity, and you can assign them to search the internet for conservation programs. And once they know about them, they don't stop there, but let them choose which program to join and then have them share in class of their experience or activities and reflections about what they're doing. And then you as a teacher can make rubrics or scoring guides to assess them if they have really learned about the topic. Okay. So that ends the implementation, how do you call this, introduction to this first module. So Miss Celia, can I continue with the second one?
Yes.
You're loading?
All right,
Okay.
there it is.
Well, Miss Celia, okay. So here it is. It's on your screen. Okay. Okay. So to connect the module on biodiversity and interactions, now that the students have learned about the different organisms that exist, okay, we don't even know that some of them are, that some of these organisms are there, but we have not yet, identified them, okay. The students would now be able to know in the second module, they will be introduced to the different interactions that happen among these organisms in the area where they live, no? Through this module. So the key questions for the second module is how does energy become transferred from one organism to another? No? The big ideas are energy flows from one organism to another in the ecosystem. Materials in the ecosystem cycle constantly, and that there are human activities that disrupt food chains and food webs. There are 3 learning activities here, no? As shown by Sir Mike kanina, and then the suggested time allotment is 5 to 6 hours. Okay, so in the first activity for Module 2, here are the objectives, okay? And then what do we want to highlight during the post-activity processing? Okay, we as teachers should be able to convey to them the sun is the ultimate source of energy in a food chain. And then our students should be able to explain about what is a producer, what is second and third consumer. No? And that feeding of one organism upon another, in which energy is transferred from one organism to another, consists a food chain. Okay, teaching tips. Since the activity would deal with the Montfort Bat Cave, okay, in areas far from Davao del Norte, remind students to carefully read the article, okay, and make sure that the students really understand and then would really have a clear picture of what the situation is. For students living in or near the area, then the teacher can call some of our students to share in class what they know about the cave and start from there. No? And start the discussion from there. Okay. In Module 2, which is entitled Making Food Webs, okay, you should let the students recall the food chain because in Activity 1, they were already asked to make the food chain. So let them compare with the food web that they have constructed in this activity. Okay. Have students make food webs that may be found in different environments because there is just only one example there. So when they have already gotten the idea of what a food web is, in one kind of environment, then you can ask them to construct another food web that occur in a different environment. And then you may have just a group present and explain the pyramid that they have made based on their food web. Because in the activity, they will be introduced to the concept and to the idea that from the food web, they can arrange the elements that they have included in the food web by means or by using the pyramid. Okay. Now, what do we want to highlight in the post-activity processing? They should be able to differentiate food chains and food webs, and all the rest, the other concepts there should be made clear. And we should really be explaining this to students so that they would understand that, what you call this, there will be two kinds of pyramid. Will be a pyramid of biomass and an energy pyramid. Okay, so they will have an experience in making this pyramid of biomass and energy pyramid when they do this activity. Okay, and in the later part of the module, there is a discussion there wherein human activities that can disrupt food chains and food webs is included. Okay. Now, the third activity is meat eaters versus plant eaters. Okay, so the teacher should be emphasizing to students the advantage of being a plant eater more often than being a meat eater. Okay, and in this part of the module, okay, as in the other module, okay, you should always ask the help also if it is the first time that you are teaching this topic. Okay, and then we want to highlight the idea here that a plant eater is more efficient in converting biomass of producers to biomass of consumers. This is explained in the learner's material, and you have an example there. Okay. In the later portion of the module, there is a discussion on the cycling of materials in the ecosystem, in which the oxygen-carbon dioxide cycle, the water cycle, and nitrogen cycle are included. And that they are going to see that when matter is recycled in ecosystems, energy flows in one direction from the first order from the producer to consumer, second order consumer, and etc. Okay, so I think I'm on the last. Okay, assessment tips. They can make posters of various food webs and food chains. They can write an essay on why I am a meat eater or a plant eater. And then very important is that you can ask them to identify which activities in their community disrupt food chains and food webs. And then you can make rubrics or scoring guides for them. And that's the end of the second module. May I turn you over to Mr. Mike? Okay.
Thank you again, Dulce. Yes, thanks, Dulce. And we bring you back now, Mike, for the presentations on modules 3, 4, and 5.
And 5.
Okay, so Mike.
Okay, I'm back. Again, good afternoon, KaSaMa teachers. Thank you, Ma'am Dulce. Thank you, Ma'am Sel. So, my other task this afternoon is to give you a walkthrough of modules 3, 4, and 5. I have shown you this slide earlier. As you see, there are 4 activities in module 3. Okay, so while I'm tasked here to discuss and walk you through modules 3, 4, and 5, I'd be partial with module 3. Okay. That's actually the module I developed. Okay, so these are the activities as I have mentioned earlier. Activity 1 has 2 parts. There's a gassy game, okay, and a sweet break. Activity 2, how the enzymes affect digestion. Activity 3, how does pH affect enzyme activity, and activity 4, a follow-up activity to activity 3. Okay. So these are the big ideas that we want our students to be able to remember, not just in time for the next quiz, but perhaps even 25 years thereafter. Okay, so what are these big ideas? Food plays a central role in the survival of species. We have identified food as a basic need without which we won't survive. Second big idea, that digestion of food is carried out by the organs and substances of the digestive system. And third big idea, that different species of organisms have different ways of digesting their food. This is actually, this has to be understood actually from, or rather in the context of biodiversity that was tackled in Module 1 by Ma'am Dul. Okay, there are different organisms, and these different organisms also have different ways of digesting their food. Okay, moving on to our next slide. You have this in your module. I think what you can do here is that you enlarge this, okay, and have your students play this board game, okay? Okay, so this is the first activity. It's a sort of motivation. In fact, this is a game similar to Snakes and Ladders. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that game, with that board game, and I'm not sure if board game is still sold elsewhere. So this is a sort of motivation that also seeks to help students recall the concept of an organ system in grade 7 and to transition to the topic at hand, the digestive system. This activity also provides an analogy of the digestive system. In playing this board game, our students will be using tokens. Okay, they can actually decide on what token to use. It can be a what do you call this? Yung tansan, yung takip ng mga bottles. It can also be a coin. It can be anything. Okay. Now, what's important is that they are made to understand that these tokens are used as an analogy for the foods they eat. Okay, and the spaces in the board game are just an analogy of the different structures of the digestive system. Okay, so there are disadvantages to the use of analogies, foremost of which is the fact that the students do not get a feel of the real thing. Okay, in other words, playing the game, show the class a poster of the digestive system, like this one shown in this slide. You also have this picture in your learner's material. You can have it again enlarged and make it into a poster. Or you can also use a model of the human torso. Okay, relate this poster or model to the test played. Let me also mention passing that the other half of this activity, titled The Sweet Break, seeks to clarify the concept of mechanical digestion and its purpose of speeding up chemical digestion of food in the latter part of the digestive process. So while showing this picture to them, or perhaps after they've completed activity 1, all two parts, two parts of activity 1, you can show this poster and have the students identify where mechanical digestion takes place in this digestive system. Okay. In my experience, most students would just tell you that mechanical digestion takes place in the mouth and nowhere else. Okay, it's just in the mouth. They have to understand as well that churning in the stomach is also part of the whole process of mechanical digestion. Okay, so moving on. Module 1 introduced the students to biodiversity, as I have pointed out earlier. Module 2, on the other hand, showed them how energy is transferred through the trophic levels, how one organism is eaten by another organism, how one organism's prey becomes another organism's predator, and the like. Logically, they should also be introduced to other digestive systems and modes of feeding in Module 3, okay, in this module. You see in this slide that despite their seemingly different shapes, these digestive systems share at least two things in common. One, that except for the cyclostomes, have a here and a little twist there, and that they all carry out the digestion of food. This, however, is not to say that all organisms have this kind of digestive system. Activity 1B introduced the students to the process of mechanical, I'm sorry. Okay. Are you familiar with this organism? This is a hydra, okay? All it's got is a mouth, which also alternates as the organism's anus. Can you imagine that? Mouth alternating the anus as well. But that's because there's no other entry or exit point here. Okay, there's just one orifice. There's just one opening in this organism, which serves as the organism's mouth and anus as well. Okay, so its body plan is simple. Okay, which is composed of just 2 layers of cells. So it has no need for a complex digestive system, similar to what you've seen earlier. Okay, so activity 1B, introduce the students to the process of mechanical digestion of food. Activity 2, this is activity 2 now, will introduce the students to chemical digestion. Okay, so in their learners module, they have here a table. Okay, so let me just briefly describe to you the setup. The students will prepare 3 test tubes. Okay, they will also prepare contents in each of these test tube. For the first test tube, the content would be water and gelatin. Second, fresh pineapple juice and gelatin. I would like to emphasize here that the pineapple juice should be fresh, okay? That's because heat-treated pineapple juice would have already lost its enzymes or would have already destroyed its enzymes, okay? So hindi na natin magagamit yon. And for the third test tube, you just place in bromeliad leaf juice and gelatin. Okay, so if you're making use of kung halimbawa bibilihin niyo yung buong prutas ng pineapple, you can substitute you can use as substitute the leaves on top of the fruit, of the pineapple fruit for bromeliad leaf. Okay? Kung wala kayong makitang bromeliad leaf, yung dahon na nasa taas ng pineapple fruit ang pwede nyong gamitin as substitute. Okay? So, in addition to that, you also need to have gelatin. That's for the third test tube. And what we would want our students to do is to observe the contents of the test tubes on day 2. So, how do the contents of the 3 test tubes look like on day 2? Ayan. So, anong nangyari sa gelatin? Yan ang actually gusto nating makita ng mga estudyante natin. So, dito makikita nila na yung water and gelatin would still look like water and gelatin on day 2. Okay? Pero dito sa test tube 2 at saka sa test tube 3, theoretically, dapat yung gelatin medyo parang nagli-liquefy na siya. Medyo natunaw na siya dapat. Okay? So, that would be theoretically the observation for test tube 2 and tube 3. Okay, that's because pineapple juice and bromeliad leaf juice have enzymes. Okay, ito yung bromelain enzyme, okay, na nagka-catalyze sa breakdown ng gelatin, which is actually a protein. Bromelain, the enzyme in pineapple juice and bromeliad leaf juice, is protease. Okay, it's a kind of protein that facilitates the breakdown of protein. It's a kind of enzyme that facilitates the breakdown of protein. Gelatin is a protein. Okay. Okay. So again, as I have pointed out earlier, this is activity 3, which is a follow-up activity to activity 2. Okay, so in this, it would be the same preparation. So we'll still be preparing the same materials that they have prepared in activity 2. So kung ano man yung sobra nila in activity 2, they can still use them for activity 3. Okay, yun nga lang dito sa activity 3, they would need to have here an acid and a base. Okay, dun sa activity natin, they can actually make use of hydrochloric acid or sodium for acid and sodium hydroxide for base. Tapos titignan nila kung ano yung mangyayari dun sa content ng test tubes A, B, and C on day 2. So how do the contents of the test tubes look like on the theoretically, sa sa test tube A, yung gelatin should have already started disintegrating. So medyo nag-liquefy na rin siya dito sa group sa test tube A. Pero sa test tube B, hindi ganon, hindi ganon ka-effective yung role ng enzymes sa breakdown ng gelatin. For test tube C, hindi rin masyadong effective ang pineapple juice, okay, sa gelatin. That's because, well, there's going to be degradation still, pero it's not as extensive as the degradation of gelatin in test tube A. That's because water here would actually dilute the pineapple juice and therefore would make it less effective. Okay, so what are we trying to simulate here? Okay, why did we have to introduce acid and base here? Actually, this activity would like to simulate the acidic environment of the stomach in which chemical digestion takes place. Okay, so activity 3 explores the role of pH in chemical digestion of food. Okay, activity 4 is an optional activity. It simply puts together in one narrative how the digestive system works in digesting the foods we eat. You are not limited to just using the YouTube clip identified in the module. Actually, there are other online resources out there that you can use. Okay, you can use any similar resource for that matter. In the TOT, in fact, I made use of an app from Education Services Australia. And here's a snapshot of the app's introductory interface. Okay, how I wish I can show you how the app works, but we have no more time. We don't have a lot of time left, so I'll just display to you how this application works. And if you can ask permission from Education Services Australia to provide you a copy of these applications, that would be good. You can use this as a substitute to the YouTube clip that I have identified in, or that has been identified in Activity 4 of Module 3. Okay, so how does this application work? The student will interact with the application, okay, with the user interface of the application. The student will be asked to select 3 kinds of foods. In fact, the student would have, I think, 9 choices of foods, okay? So the student would just be asked to choose 3 out of the 9 foods that are there, okay? So pipili siyang ganon, and then the student would be asked to click on certain buttons, okay? And what are those buttons? The user interface would ask the student whether or not the student would like to chew the food, whether or not the student would like to incorporate saliva, okay, in the digestion of food and the like, okay? So depending on the answer given by the student, kung sasabihin niya halimbawa, no, I'm not going to chew the food anymore, no, I'm not going to add saliva to the food I ate, may mga corresponding consequences yung mga yon. Tapos, kung halimbawa hindi niya i-chew yung food, if the student, for example, opted not to chew the food, pwede siyang ma-choke, okay? Tapos, magkakaroon ng animation doon of the person choking, okay? So, fully animated tong application nito, tapos it also tracks actually the journey of the food from the mouth to the anus until such time that it gets eliminated of the body, okay? But what is nice here is that it's interactive, okay? So if you can find or if you can look for a similar application online application as interactive as this, then that would be a better substitute. Okay? Okay, so the role of Activity 4 actually is just to provide a synthesis of all the concepts that have been covered in Module 3. Okay? So, a journey into the digestive system, that's Activity 4. Okay, so now that the students have learned how food is digested and what purpose digestion serves the body, they are now ready to explore the role of food in helping the organism sustain its body processes. However, an important consideration in this module is the idea that not everything we eat serves this purpose. Okay, so this is Module 4. This is actually the so what okay, of Module 3. Eh ano ngayon, kung halimbawa alam natin kung ano ang nangyayari sa mga pagkain na kinakain natin, how food gets digested mechanically and chemically as food is moved from one part of the digestive system to another. So what? Okay, so this is actually the answer to that so what of Module 3. This is Module 4, and it's titled Nutrition and Wellness. Okay? Okay, so there are 3 activities in this module. Activity 1, am I eating right? Tama ba ang aking kinakain? Okay? Activity 2, what happens when nutritional needs are not adequately met? I said earlier that an important consideration in this module is the idea that not everything we eat serves the purpose of sustaining the body to help it carry out its body processes. So what if the body does not meet its nutritional requirements? Okay, so that's for activity 2. And in activity 3, the students would be asked to design a 3-day menu that reflects balanced meals and provides the recommended daily allowance to an active teenager. Okay, so as a teenager, napaka-active ng metabolism nila, napakabilis ng metabolism nila, madali silang magutom. What menu, what meals do they need to provide their bodies with? Okay, so in activity 3, they will be asked to design a 3-day menu. Okay, and incorporate local produce in their menu. Ano itong mga local produce nito? Ito yung mga pagkain na readily available sa kanilang community, mga prutas na available sa kanilang community. Okay, mga gulay. Anong gulay ang makikita sa kanilang lugar? Okay? That's actually another way of localizing this activity. Okay, using local produce, in the preparation of their menu. Okay, so that's actually how you localize this activity para hindi masyadong malayo yung activity na ginagawa ng mga bata sa nakikita nila sa kanilang kapaligiran. Okay, so these are the big ideas for Module 4. The body needs food for energy, growth, and repair, and as source of substances for body processes. In Module 3, we said that food is a basic need. Why is it a basic need? Yon, sasagutin nyo ng Module 4. It's a basic need because our body depends on food for energy, growth and repair, and as a source of substances for body processes. Okay? And another big idea is that different types of food provide different nutrients. Okay? Okay, so in this activity, the students should be able to, this is activity 1, am I eating right? Make a record of their daily meals. Determine if their food intake adequately meets nutritional requirements. Okay, a record of their daily meals. Parang diary lang ito, parang logbook nila. Okay, tapos susulat nila doon. Ano yung kinain nila? For breakfast, anong kinain nila? For lunch, anong kinain nila? For dinner. Okay, medyo sensitive lang itong activity na ito. If you know what I mean, hindi sa lahat ng pagkakataon ang lahat ng mga estudyante natin, okay, sa lahat ng paaralan ay magkakaroon ng 3 complete meals a day. Okay, pwedeng yung mga iba talagang wala ring makuhang pagkain. Okay, yung mga iba kulang-kulang ang kinakain sa araw-araw. So in this activity, we also have to be mindful of the situation, the economic situation or conditions of our students. And then, second objective, we determine if their food intake adequately meets nutritional requirements. Again, a very touchy issue here. Okay, kasi what do you make of this? What do you make of this objective? Okay, after going through the activity, makikita natin if the student is properly nourished and what if they're not. Parang ganun. How do we handle an activity like this one? Okay, but if we are able to carry this out in a way that would not offend our students and perhaps their parents, then it's a good activity. Okay, so how do we implement the activity? So our students would record a daily meal in a daily meal journal what was eaten for 3 days. Okay, they interview school nutritionists on the kind and amount of food that one should eat. Kung wala silang school nutritionist, baka naman makatulong yung school nurse. Kung walang school nurse, probably pwede itong ibigay na assignment sa kanila, and they can be asked to interview their community health workers. Kung halimbawa wala itong mga school nurse neto at saka school nutritionist. Okay? So, yun. They just have to make an interview, or they just have to interview people who are in the know and who can help them identify the right kind and amount of food that they should eat or that they should take in, okay, in their meals. And then they compare entries in the daily meal journal with the recommended daily amount of servings. Okay, this is actually provided in the learners modules. And from time to time, you can ask your students to compare what they have gotten from their interviews with nutritionists, nurses, and health workers with what's in there. Okay, what's in the daily meal journal. And also, there's a sample meal journal there that they can study, that they can look into, and you can also ask them to refer to a table on recommended daily servings. Again, this has to be localized. Recommended daily servings actually would vary from country to country. It's a different recommended daily servings if it were in the United States, and it's a different recommended daily servings if it were in the Philippine setting. Okay, make sure that you have with you the right materials. Okay, so if you don't have one, well, actually, I think we have this in the learners modules. But if you want more on this, you can consult your health workers, or you can actually seek help from our health professionals in nearby hospitals or in nearby health centers. And then there's a take-home activity there that you can, of course, give to the students. Okay? Okay, this is activity 2. What happens when nutritional needs are not adequately met? Okay? In this activity, the students should be able to, number 1, analyze the consequences of an unhealthy diet, demonstrate understanding of diseases that result from nutrient deficiency and their prevention and treatment. Again, a very touchy issue. Again, this has to be handled very, very carefully. And especially if you are teaching in a remote area where access to healthful foods are not as readily available, then probably we can be more careful carrying this activity out. Okay, so what's important here is that our students are made to understand, okay, what these diseases are that could result from nutrient deficiency, and that it can actually be prevented. Okay, and there's treatment if it's already a problem in their family. There's a treatment to it. Okay. So how do we implement this activity? Okay, in the learners modules, the students will be asked to research on the sources of nutrients. It's actually rendered in tabular form. So there's a column there for sources of nutrients, their functions, mga nutrients ito, their functions, and the diseases that result when requirement of these nutrients is not adequately met. Okay. If their diet, for example, is lacking carbohydrates, what disease would result out of this deficiency? If protein is inadequate, what results from this inadequacy? So what diseases would come out of this inadequacy? And also, insufficient intake of nutrient can cause nutrition disorders. These disorders may cause health problems, especially children, which may hinder growth and development. Okay? So, why is it important to meet the daily requirement of healthful foods? It's because we want our students to optimize their growth potential. Okay? Ayan. And in activity 3, using essential concepts in nutrition to planning a menu, we have here 2 objectives. That after performing this activity, the student should be able to design a 3-day menu that reflects balanced meals and provide recommended daily allowance to an active teenager. And number 2, incorporate local produce in their menu. Okay. I would just like to add that in this activity, I think what's important is that this is coming actually from the Department of Health, that our students learn how to eat in moderation, yung sapat lang na quantity ng pagkain. Okay, so that's moderation. They eat balanced meals, and that they eat a variety of foods. Okay, merong acronym dyan, ano, ang DOH, they call it MOVABA. Okay, MOVABA. Eat in moderation, eat balanced meals, and eat a variety of food. Okay? Tingin ko yata kan yung variety of food, ano? Tapos balance yung third, MOVABA. Okay. So, it's actually a very simple activity. They design a 3-day menu. They incorporate use of local produce, whatever is available in their community. Mga gulay, mga prutas na readily available in their community. They incorporate that in the menu that they're going to design and present their output in class. Okay, when they're done with it. And what we want our students to take home with, okay, the ideas that we want our students to take home after performing this activity is that eating a variety of food increases the probability of getting the necessary nutrients that your body needs. Hindi pwede na puro hotdog lang kinakain nila. Hindi pwede na puro isda lang ang kinakain nila. Kasi baka meron silang mga nutrients na hindi na co-cover or na hindi na assimilate. Okay? And getting enough nutrients will result to proper growth and development and prevention of health problems. Yes, ma'am, MOVABA. Okay, MOVABA. Okay, here is another direction that I have thought about. Okay, so it's a project-based learning. Be assigned to plan and implement an aware campaign on eating the right kind and amount of foods. So students can interview school nurse or some health workers from their communities to get information they can use in their campaign. This campaign can take the form of either a poster, flyer, jingle, or the like. Maiisip na iba pang kapamaraanan upang magawa itong awareness campaign na ito. There are other ways actually with which our students can carry out this PBL here, project-based learning. You can actually also do this as a community project, okay? And as a community project, it would, of course, involve not just the students, okay, but their families, siguro, or some members of the community. Okay, last module in Unit 4 is cellular reproduction and genetics. Okay, so Module 5 completes this Unit 4, okay? Module 5 is cellular reproduction and genetics. Actually, you can actually just qualify this as Mendelian genetics. Kasi yung, as I have pointed out earlier in my overview, non-Mendelian inheritance has already been transferred to grade 9. Okay, kaya instead of the 7 activities that you see in your modules, okay, 5 activities na lang ang inilagay to. Okay, this module gives us a glimpse of growth and repair and reproduction. These are biological processes which, as we said earlier, are a function of eating the right kind and amount of food and proper nutrition. Okay, so let's try again to look into the activities that are incorporated in this module. So we have here observing mitosis, that's activity 1. Comparing mitosis and meiosis, that's activity 2. And activity 3, tossing of coins and probability. Activity 4, comparing genotypic and phenotypic ratios for a typical Mendelian trait. And activity 5, filling up the Punnett square for a dihybrid cross. Okay? Okay, now at the end of this module, at the end of module 5, we want our students to bring home the following ideas. Number 1, heredity refers to the passing on of traits from parents to offspring, from generation to generation. Variation demonstrates differences among individuals. Genetics is the study of heredity and variation, and cell division provides a backdrop for the organism level of reproduction. Okay, so these are the big ideas we want our students to go home with, okay, to take home with. Okay, so activity 1, observing mitosis. What's the objective? What are the objectives? In this activity, the students should be able to identify the different stages of mitosis in plant and animal cells, and differentiate plant and animal mitosis. Okay? So, ito na yun, no? How do you carry this out? Examine slides of onion root tip and whitefish blastula. Okay? So, meron kang onion root tip representing plant mitosis and whitefish blastula representing animal mitosis. And then identify and draw from each slide the different stages of mitosis. Okay, locate the centrioles and detect the presence of cleavage furrows. Now, there are questions, okay, in this activity, and I've just actually listed 2 of the more important ones. In which type of cells do you find the centrioles? Okay, so ito yung mga structure, ito yung structure of the centriole na makikita mo sa animals pero hindi mo makikita sa mga plants. Okay, there's a question here from Sir Gary. What cell organelle assists to make the spindle fiber in plant cells? Since plant cells does not have centrioles. What cell organelle? Okay. In plant cells. Actually po, it's the spindle fiber that does, okay, that does it. Okay, yung migration, yung movement ng mga chromosomes po to the poles. Okay, I'm not sure po what organelle it is. Okay, but what I'm sure of is that it's actually the spindle fibers that are at work here. Okay, in plant cells, and it's the centrioles in animal cells. Okay, so in which type of cells do you find cleavage furrows? In as much as plant cells have cell walls, it's not possible, it's not very likely for cleavage furrows to happen in animal cells. In plant cells. Okay, so that would be for activity 1. Okay, so I think what's important here is that they are able to identify, itong second part na ito, identify and draw from each slide the different stages of mitosis. Which cell is in prophase, in metaphase, anaphase, and in telophase. And of course, in the module, there are distinguishing characteristics to identify one stage from the other stages. Okay, so all you have to do is, all the students have to do is to look into their learners materials, their learners modules, and there they will find different characterizations of the different stages of mitosis. Okay. Comparing mitosis and meiosis. This is now activity 2. Okay. In the learners modules, there's a thorough discussion there of the events, the stages involving mitosis, and also the different stages involving meiosis. Okay, activity 2 here seeks to help students compare mitosis and meiosis. Okay, so there's a table in the learners modules that the students would complete, okay, and in the table they are just going to compare mitosis and meiosis, okay, like for example, how many daughter cells would result out of one division cycle for mitosis after one cycle of meiosis, mga ganun, no? So they would note that if it were, for example, mitosis, mga ganyan, 2 cells would come out of one cycle, okay, of cell division. And in meiosis, one cell would divide to form two cells, and if it were spermatogenesis, meaning to say sperm cell formation, the two cells, okay, would divide again in meiosis 2 to produce for daughter cells. Kaya yun nga lang, kung ang mitosis, equational division siya, meaning to say if you start with 2n, you end with 2n, so all the daughter cells would have the same ploidy number as the parent cell. Whereas in meiosis, after meiosis 2, okay, each of the 4 daughter cells would have just a haploid number, okay, of the haploid number of chromosomes. Okay, and here's an interesting thing, that our students can read in the learner's material. What happens when something goes wrong during meiosis? Okay, what if, for example, the chromosomes didn't separate during meiosis 1? Okay, so if that happens, like for example, if that happens on the 21st chromosome, then chance are pwedeng magkaroon ng kumbaga parang yung buong pair ng chromosomes na yon would join one other chromosome to form what we call as trisomy of the 21st chromosome. Okay, what is this trisomy of the 21st chromosome? This is also known as Down syndrome. Okay, and there's a thorough discussion of Down syndrome in the learner's material. Okay, and activity 3, we're now in activity 3, tossing of coins and probability. In this activity, after performing this activity, we want our students to be able to predict the outcomes of crosses based on the principle of probability. Okay, so tossing of coins, the students do tossing of coins. In the learner's material, our students would be asked to toss the coins 50 times. Okay, and we assume that the coin represents the genotype of a parent. Okay, so yung head, pwedeng yun yung dominant allele, and yung tail, pwedeng yun yung recessive allele. Okay, so after 50 tosses, we expect more or less that there'd be 50 heads turning up and 25 heads turning up and 25 tails turning up. Okay, pero this is subject to chance, okay, and probability, so there could be slight deviations. So something like that. Okay, the ratio, the distribution would be something like that. Okay, what's important here is that our students are able to relate the tossing of coins to the probability of getting one type of genotype, okay, from our parents. Okay, and then diagramming across using Punnett square. Okay, so again, in the learners modules, there's a thorough discussion of how a Punnett square works. So the Punnett square helps predict the outcome of a given cross. They use a Punnett square to allow them to determine the possible combination of genes in a cross. Okay? Okay. And activity 4, comparing genotypic and phenotypic ratios for a typical Mendelian trait. In this activity, the students should be able to solve for the phenotypic and genotypic ratios of any given cross. So how do you implement this? This is actually laden with terminologies. There's just a lot of terminologies that the students will encounter in these activities. So what I think must be done here is that from time to time, we refer to these terminologies as our students come across their use. Okay. Okay. So what is a genotype, for example? What is a phenotype, for example? Genotype refers, of course, to the genetic makeup of an individual. Okay. So how does it differ from a phenotype? Okay, phenotype is the physical characteristic, okay, that you see in an individual. Matangos ang kanyang ilong, singkit ang kanyang mga mata, something to that effect. Kulot ang kanyang buhok. Those are actually the phenotypes, the physical characteristics that we actually see in an individual, which of course we cannot do in a genotype. We do not see the genotype of an individual, okay? And in a genotype, for example, kapag ka recessive yung trait na yon, kapag ka na-express na siya, we know it's a recessive trait. Okay, we know, we know it's recessive, and we know that it's one of pure breeding line. Okay, unlike in genotype. Okay, in a genotype, kapag halimbawa doon sa experiment ni Mendel, yung round na seed na yon is dominant, and we do not know actually kung ano yung genotype ng round na ito, ano, na P na ito. Okay, is it actually a homozygous round trait, or is it a heterozygous round trait? Okay, so that's actually the difference between genotype and phenotype. Okay. Okay. So last activity, filling up the Punnett square for a dihybrid cross. Ito. So they actually they actually work here now on two traits. Okay. So pwedeng round. Okay. Shape and color. Okay. Something like so, no? Round and probably green, wrinkled and yellow. Okay. Tapos, ano yung mga ratios, ano, ng mga genotype. The same thing, okay? So, they're going to look here as well for the genotypic and the phenotypic ratios. Okay? Okay, I think that's it. Now, for thorough discussion, I just would not want to repeat here anymore. I know what's in the learner's material, but in the learner's material, you will find there a thorough discussion of how Mendel was able to come up with these early principles of heredity. Okay, through his experiment with peace. Ayan. So, yun. Balikan nyo na lang po yon sa learner's material. Napakagandang discussion po nito, okay, kung paano niya na-arrive yon. Okay? Yung mga principles na yon. And that concludes my presentation of modules 3, 4, and 5 of Unit 4. Thank you very much for listening. Ma'am Sel?
Yes, thank you, Mike. Ang feeling ko after nitong presentation na to, ano, modules 1 up to 5 ng Unit 4, parang feeling ko ito yata yung biology na kailangan ko. Parang malawak, ano, ang coverage niya at yung appreciation ng the study of life. Parang ang lakas nitong grade 8.
Opo.
Para sa akin, no? I've listened to the grade 7 presentations. Oo, ang lawak-lawak ng coverage na parang feeling ko, siguro kahit yung mga bio teachers natin, no, yung dati nang nagturo ng second year biology, ay magkakaroon ng ibang perspective dito sa grade 8, no? Tungkol sa pagtuturo ng iba't ibang concepts ng life science. Ang ganda, ang lawak, at saka parang ito na yung biology yata talaga, eh, no? Oo, ito na yung life science talaga. So, I'd like to thank again, no, lahat yung mga teachers natin na sumama sa atin ngayon. I just would like to note that we are well represented. Kahit kukonti lang yung participants natin, meron tayong from Northern Luzon, meron din tayong Southern Luzon, sa Lucena, Northern Luzon natin, Baguio, meron tayong Lucena, meron din tayong Visayas, meron tayong kasama from Leyte, at meron din sa Manila, no? NCR, meron din tayo. At we also have 2 participants from Mindanao, si Ma'am Emma Sagking ng Misamis Oriental at saka si Sir Gary Diaz ng Basilan, no? So meron tayong Luzon, NCR, Visayas at saka Mindanao ngayong hapon. So napakagandang occasion ito, no, to put bring together our teachers and our teacher educators. So I'd like to open the floor now to the question and answer session of our webinar. And may I start with a few of the items I've noted here? Parang walang masyadong nag-type, no? So you can start thinking about your questions and comments now so we can take them up later. Let me start with the question that has not been answered yet. No? Kasi kanina may mga na-type na kayong mga tanong at nasagot na rin ng either also using the text in the chat pod or orally during the respective presentations. Merong natira dito, may suggestion lang dito, Mike, about apps that you mentioned earlier. Maybe we can provide the link in KaSaMa teachers so that teachers will know where to request for a download copy of that particular app, no, that you mentioned. Also, there's a question here. I think this is still for related to module 5 from Dorothy. Sir, are we to introduce the interface with G1, S, and G2? Tama ba ang basa ko? Would you like to comment on that, Mike?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, there's a question there. In G1, S, and 2.
Okay, there's another. Yes, there's another question here from Sir Gary. Sir Gary, si Mike po yung nagpe-present. He's using John's account kasi naputol po siya kanina. So probably that's why you've addressed your question to John, no? But the question is, di pa man ini-introduce yung Down syndrome sa grade 8, diba? Mike?
Pero it's some that line. Now, what if something in meiosis goes wrong? Parang ganun. So, what if, say, for example, itong mga chromosomes na ito did not part ways, mga ganyan, ano? So, ang mangyayari, magkakaroon tayo ngayon ng isang pair ng chromosomes at saka kalahati nung original na pares ng chromosome from another parent, and when they combine, what we'll have is a tri, okay, or 3 copies of
Okay. So,
Miss
meron
Celia?
pala, Sir Gary, no? Yes, Dulce. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I would like our teachers to emphasize in the modules about biodiversity, yung sa dulo doon, yung mga activities that would help protect and conserve biodiversity in the light of all the disasters that we are experiencing now. because this one is very relevant that the students should really understand the importance of biodiversity at lalo na dun sa mga human activities that endanger biodiversity in relation to the effects of the disasters we have experienced at also yung mga activities na nagdi-disrupt dun sa module 2 nagdi-disrupt ng food chain at saka food webs. Kasi yung halimbawa ko minsan yung pauso-uso ba na gusto ng mga citizens din natin na sana makakita sila kaagad ng profit sa kanilang farm kaya nagmo-monocropping sila. That the teacher should emphasize yung hindi magandang effect din ng monocropping in relation to module 2 dun sa activities na nagdi-disrupt ng food webs at saka food chain. Hello?
Okay. Yes. Yes, I think that's
Ma'am Sel,
really important, no? Yes, Mike. Yes, Mike.
Ma'am Sel, I would also like to make some clarification. Oh, yes, ma'am. Apo. I would just like to make this clarification po, kanina nabanggit ko po kanina na sa latest version ng curriculum guide, nilipat na po yung Mendelian inheritance sa grade 9. Originally po kasi nasa grade 8 yon, makikita nila sa mga modules nila, may discussion pa po ng non-Mendelian inheritance sa kanilang mga module. But that is not to say po na ito na po yung siguradong mangyayari. Kasi ang curriculum guide po, as we all know, is a work in progress. From time to time, there are changes that are being made. Sa ngayon po, yun yung sitwasyon. Nilipat po siya sa grade 9, pero we do not know if that's going to be the case for
next school year.
For next school year. Opo, yan. So, hindi ko po alam kung yan na mismo yung sitwasyon for next school year. What I know is, yun po yung sitwasyon ngayon. Yun po yung nabago sa latest version ng curriculum guide. Pero it's a work in progress po.
Right. Okay. So, what I understand is that this particular version of these modules that you written for grade 8 last year that's being implemented this school year is really based on a version of the curriculum guide that's no longer the latest, right? So, kumbaga, before the latest, ito yon na yung non-Mendelian concept taken up in grade 8. Kaya that's why they're still covered somehow in module 5. Tama ba? But they see the latest, but not yet available version of the curriculum guide. Nandun na siya sa grade 9, right?
Grade 9.
Oo, so gano'n, no? So, again, pag naituro na nila ngayon at naintindihan na ng mga bata kahit papano, maganda na rin na in preparation for grade 9. So, folks, what we have here is the reality, no? Yung fact na talagang yung curriculum guide natin ang sinunod natin, pero yung curriculum guide ay nagbabago, so don't be surprised to see changes that will also take place soon. Hindi pa lang available sa atin yung latest version ng curriculum guide for K-12 science and all the other all the other subjects, no, hindi sila available. But again, rest assured that as soon as they are available, we will post them in KaSaMa Teachers. So, alam lang po natin, ang sabi nga ni Mike, work in progress po lahat ito, no? So, if you see any deviations, don't be surprised kasi that becomes the game of the day, no? Yung mga changes anytime. Of course, dahil gusto natin ma-improve. Okay? So, again, maraming salamat. There's one more question somewhere here, I think related din doon sa tinanong ni Sir Gary kanina, no? Yung tungkol sa mga aberrations. No? Yun nga siguro related sa mga
Apa.
So yun pa rin, no? Yung
Sir
related sa
Gary,
mga when something
apa.
goes wrong.
Sir Gary, yung aberrations po na tinutukoy ninyo dito, not all genetic aberrations po. What I'm referring to here po is only those, or rather, are only those aberrations that have something to do or that are related with meiosis po. If meiosis goes awry, if meiosis doesn't carry out properly its processes, ano po itong mga aberrations that would come as a result. Yun lang po yung gusto nating tutukan po dito.
Okay. So, again, may tayo si Dorothy, no? Wala pa pong modules for grade 9. Well, ang sagot po dyan ay mayroon pong sinusulat ngayon na mga modules for grade 9. So, watch out for the modules for grade 9. So at this point, please hold on, no? Stay on. We would need your feedback about today's webinars. And before I close formally the webinar, the question and answers portion of our webinar, I'd like to once again thank Dulce, Sebastian, and Mike Mantala of the Biology Education Group of UP NISMED for taking the time to present to us Unit 4, Living Things and Their Environment in the Grade 8 Science Curriculum. Maraming salamat ulit, Mike and Dulce. Alright, so I'd like to request folks who are still with us to please help out by answering feedback survey form. The link will be on the screen, so kindly just click on the SurveyMonkey link that you see at the middle of the screen. So po, no? So, paki-click lang po dito. Itong link na to. Okay? And then, of course, you can always go to the discussion that accompanies this webinar series in KaSaMa Teachers. You know where it is, in the Grade 8 Science Webinar Resources and Discussions. And we will also use that same page to post the PowerPoint presentations used here, as well as the link to the Australian resource, the application that Mike mentioned earlier. So everyone, kindly share with us your feedback about today's webinar.